this conversation we're about to have is about being intentional with marketing dollars, time, resources, right? We all aren't here just to have a good time, though we do like to have a good time. And we're also stewards of dollars. We're stewards of marketing dollars. So considering all of that, we're going to have a channel-based conversation about being strategic with marketing spending to drive revenue, investing for the end game. And of course, not a better two people to share this conversation with than you, Mitch, who is great steward of paid advertising dollars and has been for Alpha with all of our digital marketing efforts. And you, Andrea, who is overseeing the whole entire beast of marketing Alpha-wide as CMO. So again, the stage is investing wisely to drive revenue. And we're going to talk channel by channel when it comes to where those marketing dollars are best spent. Okay, so let's start with the environment of marketing spend that I think we've talked about it being the lowest hanging fruit. Go to the place where people are and pay to get new leads. And that would be Meta. I actually heard that more and more people are using Facebook proper. That Facebook proper is seeing a rise. A little comeback. Instagram, it's being flooded with spam more and more, and perhaps AI slop is making its way there. And X, I hear, has got a lot of AI slop that they're having to deal with, right? But as far as an environment, a channel to invest in, what are our thoughts of paid ads through social?
No, I would take this back to diversification is really important. And we've talked about this on the pod as well. You don't want to have a diving board business. And if you found all of your efforts on one platform, then it becomes volatile. So it's really important to diversify into different categories. If a med spa had 10 grand in a month, I would probably start, depending on how, I guess, many people they have in their demographic. That's a key thing too, because you can overspend on a platform and it just becomes wasteful. But I would start at Meta. That would be my starting point. If you have a budget, if you don't have a budget, I would start with Google Business Profile. Those are my two starting points. Yeah. If I could tee off the conversation.
Why would we start in Meta?
Because here's what I would say. The easiest people to market to are those who are ready to buy right now. And that's the top 3% of the buyer's pyramid. But the problem is that it's like eBay. If more people are bidding on a service or a product or a keyword in this case, then the more expensive it gets. Yeah. And so I think that, especially in our space, and it depends from market to market, but the 57% in the middle of the buyer's pyramid, I think fewer med spas have cracked the code on that. So it's a little bit more of a blue ocean than red ocean. I actually think that if there was less competition, and this is why market by market, it makes a huge difference. When we look at Google ads, Andrea, it's like, why is this cost per booking $800 and this cost per booking $100? A big part of that is competitors, because if you have more people bidding for the same keywords, then it's just like eBay. You're going through the roof.
So I'd like to answer that question a little bit differently. What's special about social media advertising is you get to engage with the audience in a multi-dimensional sort of format versus in paid search, where it's very flat, it's very ad copy intensive. In social media ads, you have a visual element. Sometimes that visual element is even a video. So you can incorporate music and voiceover, and in addition to the visual imagery that accompanies that. And you can connect with your audience in a way that you just can't do in a Google Ads format. So to that end, social media ads plays multiple roles. It helps cultivate the awareness, the credibility, the reputational aspects of the brand, while also inviting people to take the next step and start a conversation, ideally one that's higher intent to come in and
Yeah.
pay us a visit.
Well, and perhaps even more so in the aesthetics industry. It's in the name, right? So like the importance of the way your story is carried out visually is more easily conveyed on a platform that has the engagement, the visual engagement front and center on a feed, as opposed to, with our paid with paid search, where that visual engagement is not the initial decision making mechanism. It is copy, and then behind the copy, then you have that opportunity. So it's not completely void of visual, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense that like that an industry that has aesthetics in the name would be utilizing or the benefits of a meta-based advertising would be there. Also, the amount of conversations that are taking place on that platform that are aesthetics conversations, right? So just as much as I'm sure providers, owners, cringe at the thought of conversations from people that should not be having those conversations are taking place on social media about filler and about all the other treatments. And it's like, you're not qualified to say that. Okay, true. But the fact that those conversations are happening on that platform means that there's an appetite that's being cultivated on that platform, and that you can also step in and actually use that to your advantage. Correct and educate on a platform that is perhaps miseducating.
I think it makes you more discoverable in that community format, whereas Google Ads, that's a different type of discoverability where it's an individual who's removed from the community where the conversations are happening, and they independently are going out and researching. They could be comparison shopping at that point. Paid search typically does have a high buying intent, but you pay for that.
Right.
As Mitch was saying,
Yeah.
the cost does go up, especially in very saturated markets.
Yeah.
So it's a different dynamic, and I do think it's important to keep paid search as part of the marketing mix, but just understand the mindset, the intention of people who are using that. And of course, you can get a lot more granular about the types of queries and what you're bidding on to gauge where they're at in that journey and calibrate your bid strategy accordingly.
Yeah, I also love that we have you guys have such a focus. I say you guys, I do too, but you guys really have a focus on what the data is saying, right? And so we might have a universal philosophy, but if the data is suggesting differently, then you got to go with what the data is saying. That's different market to market, maybe different season to season. But like you were saying, Mitch, this and also Google Business Profile, like getting reviews, getting everything set up on Google Business Profile, and having your paid, in this case, Meta, but paid social up and running is kind of like the first thing to do. And to your point, Andrea, it is a component of the pie chart, and an important component of the pie chart, but perhaps not the only component. We also talked about paid search as well. What's your guys' take in terms of, if you had, again, 100% of budget looking by percentage, what percent against paid social should be paid search? I know there's a lot of nuance to this.
A lot.
There's a lot of nuance, but let me ask it this way: are you more paid search or more paid social? You kind of, I felt like when we were talking about it, there was a stance that we were taking that was preferring paid social over paid search.
I don't think I prefer one over the other in every circumstance. I think that there's a larger pool to grab from on the social media front, because again, when you're looking at the demand, which, on the buyer's pyramid, the 57% in the middle who are kind of on the fence, those are the people on social media, versus the 3% at the top. There's a finite amount of 3%ers, right? And so it can drastically depend on where you're located.
Yeah.
If you're in LA, there's a lot more competition, but there's also a lot more people searching for Botox. So that could either work for you or against you, right?
Love that.
Yeah.
So no take. Awesome. No take. Awesome. Okay.
It depends. It depends. But I would start with Meta. I still hold
You still hold the Meta
hold to
Well,
that.
And I believe in starting with Meta as well. Again, starting. So there's an implication in that question about the stage of growth of the practice, this hypothetical practice. So if you're just getting started, as I was saying earlier, Meta ads, Facebook, Instagram, that it rewards you on multiple fronts because of that multimedia enriching experience, contextualized in communities who are talking about these topics. That's where it's going to perform the most powerfully. The odds are also that your brand hasn't necessarily built up equity to perform as strongly on paid search. Your paid search performance is going to look a lot better if your market already has an idea of who you are and your credibility in the space. So your conversion rates will improve over time on paid search as your brand matures and gets greater recognition.
Did somebody say brand? Yeah. That was dumb. But yeah, I guess as we move to this next channel, brand exists. At least content strategy that is not paid is another strategy in social media, and that's a proxy to again kind of this bigger story that you were kind of mentioning. But investment in brand. I guess the easiest place to kind of look at would be website optimization, the role of SEO, and the investment that is your whole entire digital presence. In this case, not paying for people to see, but investing for the whole entire story. I have my thoughts on this. I think my thoughts are like do that now and do it as soon as possible, build it out and keep on building it out. But again, we started this conversation with limited resources. Like the reality is that time is limited, money is limited, and the questions that you get all the time in terms of like, okay, well, what should we do here? Or man, I feel this way. And again, you guys are data people, so I deal a lot with like the feelings of a brand, and that's important too. What is your thoughts on the investment and how big the investment should be, or when that investment should happen for a web or rebrand build?
So working with you has changed my perspective on this, Kevin. Because I mean, let's just props you for just 1 second. The sites you make are phenomenal.
Thank you.
And what I've come to, I like analogies because it helps my brain take concepts into reality.
Because I'm brilliant like that. Because I have so many. I am so educated. That was me being you, by the way. That was not me being me. That was me being you.
Just to clarify. Sorry, I was doing my pat myself on the back routine. Kevin's like, I'm feeling insecure. I view it as SEO is almost like sports car tires. And if you put sports car tires on a Honda Civic, is that going to make that drastic of a difference? It's like, oh, okay, make a little bit of a performance difference here, but it's not going to be massive. I would equate the engine, the car, the vehicle to the website. And I think that SEO and a good website, they're kind of interchangeable. They go hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other. But you definitely can have SEO optimization happening on a broken vehicle. And that would not be considered, I would not consider that a good worthwhile investment. A real case study would be one of our partners came on board and had spent over $200,000 in the last 2 years on SEO. We cut the rug out of it. Not a whole lot changed after that. And then Kevin, you rebuilt their website and they went from like, a 2 out of 10 to like an 8 out of 10. And it was just from the site structure rebuild. So that's an example of I can put sports car tires and keep putting more and more and more and invest more on, the tires. But if I'm not investing in the actual vehicle, then I would argue not efficiently spending your money. What I would rather a practice does is save up the amount that they would have spent on SEO for a website build that out, and then after that, then go put sports car tires on your sports car, and then you're going to actually really be off to the races.
I agree. They're extremely integrated, and the SEO component, by and large, and some SEO out there is going to come punch me in the face. So I'm going to, true to form, over explain, but I'll try to be as concise as possible. So SEO, we have the local SEO component, we have the content optimization, the technical aspects of SEO, and backlink building.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't speak to the conversion rate optimization of
Mhm.
SEO. So if you're firing on all cylinders with those upfront components of SEO, great. You may be ranking, or in these days, you may be getting references in whatever your AI tool of choice is.
Mm-hmm.
So you may be discoverable by the bots, but if people aren't coming to the site and engaging with you in the way that you intend, if they aren't converting, then you've got to work on the website. And that could be the overall brand
Mhm.
needs an overhaul or a refresh on the lighter side. It could also just be that the website itself is poorly, maybe the information architecture is sound from the crawler standpoint, but it may not be resonating with the audience when they arrive. And so giving it that facelift and coming up with content that's more conducive to
Mhm.
educating, engaging, and ultimately converting,
Mm-hmm.
that's a separate effort. But SEO isn't serving its purpose if the website isn't driving conversions at the rate that we need.
Come on. That was beautiful. Yeah. Um, I think about how young the industry is. And this is all relative because it's aging. But if you look at, like, I don't know, some people say like 2008, I think, for like the time when the industry really started to rise. People are going to probably come at me and be like, no, that's not true. Like Botox, Gene Carruthers and Botox happened in like late 80s or whatever. But I think I think this industry is young. And what's interesting is that as saturated as it's become really saturated still by very few well-developed, beautiful brands. And it's easy for me or us to say aesthetics. It's in the name of the industry that brands would be aesthetic. So why is it that so few brands are aesthetic? Why is it that so few? Well, I would argue that it's because of a young industry that's built through the powerhouses that are the providers and
Mhm.
doctors who didn't come at it from a vantage point of marketing, let alone brand. I'm not saying this is a hard and fast rule and everybody are this way. There are beautiful brands that are out there. They're just few and far between. The majority of the industry does not have strong brands. There, I
Well,
said it.
and just to get operational about
Yeah.
it, from a marketing operational about it, they don't necessarily have the resources or know what resources to even
Right.
look for and procure and how to ask them and task them to craft the brand. So if you don't even know what questions to ask of these teams and
Right.
who the right people to ask are, you're starting from a disadvantaged position. It's overcomable, but you have to know what to even
Yeah.
be looking for.
Right. Well, and it's such a brand is such a multifaceted thing, right? So like everybody that speaks to brand speaks to it through their own bias of like, well, yeah, but I'm more of a copy guy, or yeah, well, but I'm more of like a PR guy, right? Or gal. But like I guess when thinking about the investment of brand, when thinking about the investment of website, when thinking about the investment of SEO, we hear SEO a lot. We actually hear, I'm so glad we mentioned SEO happening in tandem with the idea of your website and what your website is doing to convert. Why would you invest all the money in SEO when ultimately your website is not converting? And all of this is, again, proxy to brand. But I look at the investment of brand through photography, through video, through graphic design, through colors, but also ultimately through the build out of a website as being a foundational thing. And I look at that investment, so glad you said it that way, Mitch, of like, if you're going to invest all of these dollars into SEO because everybody invests in SEO, and I've heard I need to invest in SEO, and man, people can't find me when they search in Google, right? Like, I get it. But if you're going to invest all that money, shouldn't you really think about the end goal in mind first before you start investing that money?
Right.
Mhm.
When they find you, are they going to like what they see?
Yeah, yeah. And that's where, like you said, is foundational. I'd be curious within this group, we talked about where to prioritize spending your money first. And obviously, if we were in an isolated conversation of what platform should we spend on, that's
Yeah.
a different question than should we make sure that a broken brand is fixed before advertising? Like, at what point do you invest in that, or even notice? Like, where is the point of, okay, we have to fix this before we actually go into and even promote paid ads?
Yeah, I think on a practical level, we have to get money flowing in the machine. And so like the low-hanging fruit, or like the injecting of energy that is most easily, we would argue, taken place within paid social, is, to me, the first place. In other words, I don't think you start with the rebrand and you just like tear down the house. I think you also really need to understand what the story is, where the positioning is, and all of that comes through as marketing starts to and data starts to flow. But I think early on, there should be a very important conversation that is what is our content and who we are, and how are we developing that through the channels that we're developing that we're investing in. It's a proxy to how do we show up for people, and how are we different than the mom and pops or whatever store, maybe even the chain down the road. I won't name any names, but how are we different than them? I think those are important conversations to have all the time, because it informs what we do in our day and age. But I wouldn't say that we would you should just tear the whole thing down from the very beginning. But I do think you shouldn't be afraid to have conversations and consider a lifespan of a brand, a lifespan of a website. You might love what you got right now, and in 5 years' time, you might feel like, I need a refresh, and that's a feeling. Should be substantiated by data. But I think that that's a healthy a healthy cycle. I think all of this is healthy. We are constantly changing and developing, and our stories are too. So
Yeah, I do think that the story element is relevant there, that it's expected that our brand character over time is going to develop, much like a character
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a movie, where we started from somewhere and we're evolving, and we don't necessarily want to do a 180 on our identity.
Right.
But I do think that it's helpful not only to go through the process of the rebrand for internal purposes, but it's also a story that can be narrated, not just executing the rebrand, but talking about it and taking pride in it and sharing it with the audience. I think that it signals to them that we're a living organism. We're not just this relic, this monument to med spas, that it personifies you in a way, and it helps make you more interesting and relatable.
And in a lot of ways, again, with limited time, energy, resources, in a lot of ways, it's a heavy lift. It's an expensive project.
Mhm.
It's expensive to replace, and we talk about rebrands, like to replace where that brand is, that signage, all of that. Like, the investment is double what you would think it would be. But in other ways, your team is also changing too, right? Like, providers are changing. To your point with narrators and with story, new people are telling the story. And I think that there's a pretty cool relationship that you have with an opportunity that you have to update that. And that doesn't necessarily need to hit the bottom line with money.
So I think a nice segue from that is not falling into a trap of build it and they will come.
Mm.
And so you build this beautiful brand, you do need to invest properly, at least sufficiently to start out, to drive people to it and make yourself discoverable across multiple touch points. Which brings us full circle to the original question of what marketing channels should we prioritize? All of them.
Yes.
All of them.
Said the CMO. There's not one marketing channel. Yeah.
And of course, going back to the cop out of, well, it depends.
Yeah.
So, of course, depending on your growth stage, you're going to have a finite amount of dollars to invest. So, of course, there's a natural progression of which channels make sense to prioritize.
Yeah.
And I agree with Mitch that in many cases, if you're just getting your feet wet, social media is a great place to start. But if you have enough budget to also be testing the waters on paid search in parallel, just if you don't do it out the gates, just anticipate that you should and you are going to. But I think that, and this transcends just the med spa industry, there is such a habit among marketers or businesses in general of fixating on the last touch marketing source that got the lead. And they're completely blind to the fact that there could have been 5 other touch points through 5 other completely different marketing channels that got you that lead, but you just don't have a tangible record of it in your data set. Or you can actually measure it, but you didn't have an experimental design behind the scenes to actually measure the incremental lift of having a certain media mix at play for a given audience. So media mix marketing is something that I do have quite a lot of experience with outside of this industry. And I think that having that mindset would serve us all really well. Media mix in and of itself is having multiple marketing channels running in concert with one another. And there are ways in which you can measure by being very, very careful in how you set up your targeting mechanisms. But you can look at the incrementality of having one marketing channel or a certain set of marketing channels on versus some subset of that.
So I think it'd be interesting to see a side by side of number of touch points within a particular channel versus number of varied touch points or mixed touch points that you have going in tandem, right? And how much more effective, obviously, that would be.
Right. So it is worthy of calling out that it's difficult to be as scientific in this approach, given sample size constraints in these hyper local sorts of markets. But there are ways of attacking this problem and finding that right mix. Just the most important takeaway is for everyone to remember that odds are people encountered you through multiple marketing sources. So don't overly credit the last touch just because you couldn't see what happened upstream.
Yeah, we didn't touch on business to business partnerships and relationships and the importance of those channels. We didn't touch on email. We didn't touch on SMS. Referral program. But all of these are different touch points that are worthy of investment, right? And so I think kind of to summarize it here, I thought you did it absolutely brilliantly, Andrea, but just to kind of touch on those, do any of those kind of perk your guys' interest of like, hey, this one's oft forgotten about, and it's a worthy investment, or it's a worthy to bring up, to add weight. I know you said all, but were there any from that list that you were like,
poor email? How many times over the last, I won't say how long I've been in this industry, but I'll say 10 plus years. Okay, 20, almost 20. I have been told for the better part of 20 years, email is dead. Email is dead. Email is dead. And yet, wouldn't you know it, people still, and not just in this industry, marketers still use email, and it's a low cost, negligible cost channel by and large that drives, it still drives revenue. So it can be deprioritized just because of this prevailing notion that nobody looks at their email anymore, but it's a numbers game. So don't neglect email just because it's not the sexy thing anymore. Yeah. It's still it's still a powerful complement to SMS. SMS is one that lights me up as well, but I think that one is pretty well capitalized on in this space.
If I were to go from top to bottom of what I would invest in, just to conclude, I think that your list, Andrew, you touched on that, is a great place to start. If you already have an established business, I think that there's a lot of neglect in what you already have. Like, you have a gold mine under your feet and you just need a shovel. Send out some texts, make sure they're opted in, but send out some texts, send out some emails, leverage what you already have, break those up into different segments. Maybe the people who booked but they didn't show, or they turn into a lead but they didn't book. Like, capitalize on those, segment those, and then send your list something, right? And then I would say, on an organic standpoint, Google Business Profile is always going to be the highest intent. If someone searches near me, Google is putting that above the website. So you could spend $20,000, $40,000 on a website, but if you don't have Google Business, your website's still going to show up underneath the businesses who are in Google Business.
And who knows how much AI is favoring that when it serves up its own answers.
Yes.
Which this whole conversation, there's a lot of moving targets, right? With AI and with kind of human behavior. We're on the cusp of a lot of changes when it comes to like our cultural milieu, right? Of like how we're engaging with content and what areas we're engaging with it are. But we've talked often about Google Business Profile and about how easy and important that setting that up is. Guys, this was a huge conversation. Thank you so much. I hope that this was helpful. Hey, let's do this again sometime.
Sounds good.